I'm going to record it this time too. I think we might be live. If anyone's watching, they're just going to be waiting here for us to. That's weird because like when I go to the actual page, it looks like it's streaming us, but the player is.
It says live on mine. It says up in the corner, live on YouTube.
Yeah, it says we're streaming, so I guess we're gonna go for it. All right, let me record.
Yeah, we're streaming. I just clicked for the YouTube link.
And welcome back to the Damn Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Baines, and with me, as always, is beaverblitz.com publisher and owner Angie Machado. We are coming to you live on YouTube and anytime on your favorite podcasting app. And we're doing this a little earlier today on Wednesday. I just got back from Oregon State's baseball game against Grand Canyon. Angie and I both have some other commitments that we have to get to tonight. So if you're able to join us live, you might be one of the few, as we gave a little short notice here. But
short notice today. We
appreciate you all for joining us here for week 3 of Damn Podcast live on YouTube. And we were talking just briefly before we started here. I'm in a bit of a rush here because, like I said, I just got back from the baseball game. So I'm pulling things up as we go. But I think we're good now. So we were hoping this would be our first week with a guest. I did get an interview with Jacob Melton, but in my hassle, rush getting back here, didn't have time to upload it. So next week, I promise, is the week that we will have a guest on the podcast.
And stick with Beaver Blitz because you'll have that uploaded. So you can watch Melton. You just won't be part of our live broadcast today.
Yeah, it'll be up on Beaver Blitz video on YouTube, and I will post it on Beaver Blitz as well. Be sure to leave your questions and comments in the chat here on YouTube if you're watching us live. And Angie, how are you doing here on Wednesday, March 16th?
I am good. So I think most of you guys know I broke my foot 6 weeks ago and I've been in a walking boot. I went and had an x-ray done today because I go back to see the podiatrist tomorrow. And I just got I'm hoping the podiatrist tells me different, but it says it's marginally worse. So I don't know what that means because I started to walk without the boot this week. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. I'm hoping it's because I did a weighted x-ray this time with my full weight on it instead of just being on a table, but that's how I'm doing right now, Carter. So aren't you sorry you asked?
Yeah, sorry for even bringing it up. Jeez. Yeah, well, I mean, that's not ideal. It's reminiscent of a lot of the Oregon State football players that we've seen over the years that suffer quote unquote setbacks with their foot injuries.
Yeah. So the boot, I'm actually though getting around pretty well. So if I have to be in the boot a little bit longer,
so be it.
I'm cruising around.
Yeah, you've gotten used to it by now. I'm good. As you can see, if you're watching us live, I've got my Beaver Blitz sweatshirt on and my Beaver Blitz mug. How about that? So my gear came in the mail on Friday, so almost a week ago. So I was able to wash it all and get it all ready for this week's episode. And I feel official. Wore it to the baseball game too, and was repping the site at Goss today. So pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with the way they all turned out. I know I've heard from multiple people as well who have said that theirs came in the mail last week. So that first, if you ordered on the first day, the site went live. If your order isn't here by now, it should be here anytime. Angie, have you gotten anything yet?
No. So I was a little later to the party because I couldn't decide what I wanted, and I knew I wanted to get my dad something. So I put my order in. Gosh, I want to say like Saturday or Sunday of this week. So it is like it's shipped. It just doesn't. I don't know how long it's going to take to get here. I think it's coming from Vegas though, so it shouldn't take too long. So
Henderson, Nevada. Yep. Coming from Henderson, the home of Caden Grenier.
Look at that. Dropping knowledge.
Yeah. So speaking of baseball, we're going to get into some baseball talk here in just a minute. Oregon State wrapped up a midweek series against GCU. But before we get into any sports, Angie, what are you drinking tonight?
Okay. I'm taking it local because last week I did have red wine. This, I love stout. I'm not a big beer girl, but I love myself a dark stout. So I'm drinking Pelican Brew Pub Tsunami Export Stout. What do you got?
Repping the Oregon coast. I love it. So tomorrow, as you know, March 17th is St. Patrick's Day. So I had to go a little Irish today. I'm going hot chocolate with some Baileys in there. So an Irish cream hot chocolate in honor of St. Patty's Day tomorrow.
You got any Irish in you, Carter?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay, I do.
My ancestry DNA test did not bring back any Irish. So
really, so what? Okay, totally change. What is your makeup? What is Baines? What's the name of Baines?
About 40% German. Okay. A decent amount of just random Western European countries, and a little bit of Native American as well. So
me too. I'm like that whole Western Euro. Lots of Scandi. I'm a good chunk Scandinavian, and then I had a little Southern European, and then I'm
basically we're mutts, right?
Yes, 3% though. 3% of my makeup is Native American, and we actually have traced it back right to this Willamette Valley, so it's kind of fun. Okay, let's start talking some spring football.
Yeah, let's get into spring football because football dominates all here at Beaver Blitz. Even in a week where we don't have practice to go to. So this is the first of 2 weeks off as the team focuses on finals right now. It's the middle of finals week at Oregon State, and then they'll take a week off of just about everything next week for spring break. So it's a down period for football, but that doesn't mean that the coaches aren't still working, because if you saw what day was it? Monday, there was a commitment via the transfer portal. Griffin from Georgia Tech, a former 4-star running back who visited Oregon State's practice on Saturday, made his commitment shortly thereafter. And I wasn't able to fully 100% with confidence ID him at practice on Saturday, but I saw someone that looked very much like him wearing an Oregon State sweatshirt. And when I saw that before the commitment, I said, okay, that's probably a good sign if that is him. So
yes,
Angie, what's you had the story on Beaver Blitz as soon as the commitment broke. What's kind of your read on what Griffin brings to the Oregon State backfield?
Oregon State is needing to fill, and I know people on Blitz were kind of maybe out of left field a little bit, but the Beavs are losing a ton of productivity in BJ Baylor. So really having to shore that up. You've watched Jameis's film. He's quick. He's a bigger back. He's not huge, but like 5'10", 205, 210-ish. He's got some great moves. Former 4-star out of Georgia, has played in the SEC, or I'm sorry, not the SEC, but down in Georgia at Georgia Tech. So against some really good competition. He had over 20 offers of big name programs, Miami, Florida State, you name it. So I'm excited. I know Oregon State has a stable full of great running backs, and I'm really excited to see what some of those younger guys can do. Then you have Trey Lowe, and
Sean Fenwick,
Deshaun Fenwick, who I'm excited to see them more in a starring role, but I also wonder about injuries with them and how healthy they can stay and be maybe that every down back. So to see a guy, Jameis he battled with a little injury this past year, and redshirt at this in 2021 for the Yellow Jackets. But then there's, Demir Collins, which we've talked about last week, how much weight and size he's put on. I'm excited to see Isaiah Newell. And then I know we've talked too about Damian Martinez, but those are all unproven backs, and it's time to get another, guy in there. And one thing we've seen with Coach Smith is he's not going to bring a guy in from the portal unless that guy can make the room better. So excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, and chalk it up as another Power 5 transfer coming into Oregon State, which, I mean, how many is it at this point? It's, I've lost track essentially of where we're at now. And another guy who I think can make an impact right away when he gets to Oregon State. So, it's not going to be for a lack of competition. There's all sorts of talent, as you just mentioned. in the running back room. But I think it's big to bring in another guy for depth purposes. And, you never know when an injury is going to pop up. So getting Jameis Griffin to Oregon State, I think, it surprised me a little bit when I saw that another running back was coming in. I thought if Oregon State was going to save a scholarship for the portal, it would be at a position more, of a little greater need. But you're not going to turn down a former 4-star if
I think Oregon State too. So the plan was to bring Jameis in with his brother Jaquan. They both entered the portal. Jaquan was a defensive lineman. It would have been the plan was to bring them both in. Jaquan actually ended up committing and starting school at Coastal Carolina, though. So he got into spring practice and
kind of started. What's the Coastal Carolina mascot?
Oh my gosh. I know Dustin Johnson went to school there. So I know that. I don't know.
Chanticleers.
That's right. The Chanticleers. They're like roosters. Yep, they're kind of like the Gamecocks.
They're the ones with the teal football field.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Taken after
Dustin Johnson. Dustin Johnson. That's like Eric's favorite golfer. Not mine, but Eric's.
There you go. Another kind of key transfer portal target that Oregon State's looking at, and I think this is the main one, when you think of transfer portal targets right now. Jameis Griffin kind of came out of nowhere, but JT Daniels is still on Oregon State's radar, very much so. I identified him at practice last week. What was that, last Thursday? I think it was after we had recorded that week's damn podcast. And he got into town on Wednesday night. So we recorded, and he was on campus Wednesday late afternoon. Went out to dinner with the staff Wednesday night. Was at practice Thursday. Yes, you sent me the grainy Sasquatch kind of. Is this JT Daniels? So he is at Missouri right now, and then his other visit will be to West Virginia. I like where Oregon State stands right now, and I hate saying that because I think being first sometimes can be a tough position to be in because it gives the other two schools a chance to kind of make up for any deficiencies that he may have saw while he was on his trip. I think what he is doing, though, is going about this so business-like. He's played now for the biggest names, really, the biggest brand with Georgia. So he's going about this very business-like. And what I love, this is a guy who will make Oregon State better from the onset. He knows the, I mean, it was fun to I've heard that he was kind of watching. Carter told me he was at practice, really kind of studying what the quarterbacks did, was right there next to Coach Lindgren. So it'll be a great transition. If somehow the Beavs, I like where they stand now. Like I said, it's just such a hard, we've seen Oregon State finish runner up so many times, but if he's paying attention to what Oregon State does, I know in the lodge, Mr. Gray has talked about, this is a 10-win team if JT Daniels is here, and I totally agree. They need a quarterback that has a pocket presence, who has a huddle presence, and can go downfield. I'm right there with you with you and Mr. Gray on the 10-win assessment. I think bringing JT Daniels into Oregon State immediately makes them a dark horse to win the North. And with Lincoln Riley coming into USC, I think there's still a little bit of building that needs to be done there before they, officially take over the conference again. So if Oregon State's going to steal a Pac-12 championship, I think it needs to be this year or the next. And bringing in someone of JT Daniels' caliber is enough to get you, over the hump a little bit from the 7-win mark to the 10-ish. I think it would be huge. I was going to ask you what you had been hearing on the JT Daniels front. You kind of covered it there, but I want to say from my perspective, I think, West Virginia and Oregon State strike me as the two most likely destinations. I know that, he's obviously at Missouri right now on a visit, and Greg Biggins reported that Oklahoma State and Colorado are also in the mix as somewhat of a, de facto top 5. But out of those 5, Oregon State being his first visit, I think does go a long way. I think what Oregon State has to offer him as a potentially attractive landing spot, positions them really well against that group. Missouri, that one doesn't make quite as much sense to me, just because he'd be playing in the SEC, and no offense to Missouri, but that is a downgrade from Georgia. You're going to be playing against the likes of a Georgia or an Alabama, these really tough defenses. Whereas I think if you come out west or go to West Virginia, you're playing with some more high flying offenses against some weaker opponents. What scares me about West Virginia is Graham Harrell being on staff there, because obviously he recruited him to USC, already has that connection. Now kind of the double-edged sword there is that Graham Harrell didn't really favor him once he got to USC. Keaton Slovis kind of jumped up the depth chart there and eventually won the starting job, and JT walked. So I think there are, upsides and downsides to most of these landing spots. But I think Oregon State, to be quite honest with you, has the most to offer of those 5 schools.
Yeah. And I think, like, we talked about, he's been there. Now, what's interesting is Greg Biggins is telling me that he won't make his decision till May, after he graduates. I'm hearing that we should know something in the next week or 2. So I'm keeping my eyes open on this one and my ears open. I have great sources all over the place, connected down in SoCal and, beyond. So we will keep our ears open. I've heard some rumblings how awesome he is just with his IQ. His football IQ is great. He even wanted to learn a little bit about the Beaver defense before practice so that he could go out and kind of watch and check out their coverages. So he's a scholar by all accounts of the game. And I think he would, like I said, it would seriously be the biggest commitment in Oregon State's history. And that's saying something, even with the, Isaac Seumalo and I'm going to say Simi Cooley, but at the time, Simi Cooley was like the giantess, but this would be bigger than that. So plus at a position of need.
It truly is, it has the potential to be program changing. I think it could be what Oregon State needs to kind of launch itself into the Pac-12 contender conversation for the next few years. And it's especially big in a time where Oregon State really needs to do the most it can to keep up, because college football is changing so quickly.
No, Carter, what are your thoughts? Because I know in the Lodge, we talk about this a lot, and I'm not going to argue the fact that Oregon State needs some D tackle help, but we're talking about how big this would be. Then do you go, like, if you can somehow land JT Daniels, do you just hit that portal hard for a D tackle to try to get in the mix, or do you go with what you have?
Yeah, I think as long as you've got scholarships available, you have to be looking D-line if you're Oregon State, and I'm sure they are. It's just very difficult outside of the SEC and even a little bit in the Big 12, with those Texas connections, to bring in a defensive tackle and really defensive linemen in general who can actively alter a game. Outside of the SEC and some of the top programs outside of that conference, what you see is kind of what you see at Oregon State. It's smaller bodies, guys who have moved over from O-line or outside linebacker. And, they're not the guys that you see 300 pounds, ultra athletic running 4.7 40s at Alabama.
Yeah.
So, I think it's going to always be difficult to bring that kind of talent to Corvallis, but the transfer portal, I think, is the easiest way to do it if they are able to break through and bring one of those guys in.
It's just stupid that those twins from North Texas committed to UCLA before checking out Oregon State.
That one hurts a little bit. That one hurts a little bit. Yeah. All right, we're going to move into some baseball now. That's pretty much a wrap on football. As I said, not a whole lot going on with practice, taking a 2-week break. But I just got back from Oregon State's midweek game against, the second of 2 midweek games against Grand Canyon. Oregon State wins the first one 9-8 on a walk-off single by Greg Fuchs, and then drops today's finale of the 2-game set 13-7 in a game that, quite frankly, was never close. Angie, I don't know how much of it you saw, if any, but from the first inning, it was very clear Oregon State was going to be in for kind of a long day. The pitching just wasn't there.
Though. Wow. Both games for both teams had some offense going.
Yeah, it was a high scoring midweek series. I think, both teams have very good offenses, but the pitching, quite frankly, wasn't very good either. Oregon State today actually recorded, it was a bullpen day. Oregon State unloaded the bench there and actually recorded no strikeouts, which I mean, quite frankly, like I looked in the media guide during the game to see if it was mentioned when the last time that happened was. Not in there, but I have to guess you've got to go back quite a ways. And it's especially rare now in an era of baseball where the three true outcomes are more and more prevalent. So, Angie, first of all, did you get a chance to watch either of the two games this week?
I just saw bits and pieces of it as I was coming in and out.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned it, high scoring, Oregon State scores 16 runs and across 2 days and loses one of those games. Offense, not the issue for Oregon State. It just does come down to the pitching depth. And with a couple of guys being out with injuries, I think that's going to hurt, especially in midweek games. So the key to winning those midweek games and then to winning a few games in the postseason, I think it's just going to come down to, can you outscore teams? And quite frankly, Oregon State does have that ability.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at the rankings right now as we wrap up this midweek series. Going into the series, Oregon State was ranked as highly as third by two publications. They check in at number 5 on D1 Baseball, which is kind of the most widely used ranking.
Gold standard.
A lot of top 5 rankings out there, Angie. What's kind of, I asked you last week too, but what's kind of your assessment of where this team's at now that
I think they're where they should be.
1 week into Pac-12 play.
Yeah, I think they're where they should be. It's kind of a bummer they could sweep Wazoo, but I mean, they got the series, and I'm anxious to see the next couple weeks play out for them. But this is a top 5 team. I mean, this is I mean, we said weeks ago, Carter, that this was an Omaha or bust team. So, they're doing what they need to do, and pitching is a little, with Fennings and not Melton, Frisch out. Which Fennings, I believe, is supposed to be back. Frisch is having Tommy John.
Okay, so let's update that. So we have heard from sources that Jake Fennings is close to a return, kind of a week to week type situation.
And his is back. Is that right?
It's a back strain. Okay. Yeah. So a short term issue. And then with Will Frisch, it's not necessarily Tommy John, but Joe Freeman of the Oregonian is reporting now that Will Frisch is officially out for the year with season ending surgery. Okay. But it's more of like an exploratory surgery than it is to, repair a specific, a specific ligament. I want to say it was like a UCL injury or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but he is out for the year with elbow surgery. That is not definitively Tommy John.
Okay.
So obviously, not the news you're hoping to hear, but it is better than the alternative of being out for all of this year and then, probably most of next year with Tommy John. So no Frisch this year means you'll probably see a lot of Jacob Kamatz on Sundays once Jacob Fennings is back. But that's where the starting rotation stands right now.
At least they're not broken metatarsals, Carter.
Yeah. Can't have those guys walking around in boots like Angie Machado.
Yeah, can't do it.
Let's talk a little bit about Jacob Melton because he's on a bit of a tear right now.
He's on a
bit
tear.
Of a power surge. So Melton in game 1 of the series against GCU goes deep to straightaway center off the batter's eye, which you never see at Goss. I mean, that is the deepest part of the park in a pitcher's park. Just very rare. The last one that comes to mind, I think, is Adley back in 2019. I think he had a shot to straightaway center, but it is very rare. And it just caps off a weekend and into this week of just absolutely crushing the ball by Jacob Melton. He had a 2-homer game at Washington State, a 3rd home run later in the weekend. Yeah, he's lighting it up. He is trending towards the record at Oregon State for RBI, and he's pacing the Pac-12 in batting average and home runs. So that's not too shabby at this point in the season. Yeah,
no, he's watching him. I mean, I haven't seen a swing as pretty as Adley's in quite some time, but he's right there.
Yeah. Every time he comes to the plate, you just expect it to go for extra bases, if not more. He actually moved up to the 2 hole in the order for these 2 games, which, I asked him today after the game because he was, we talked to Mitch Canham and Jacob Melton after the game today. And, Jacob said there's not really much of a difference to him, whether he's batting 4th, 5th or 2nd. We haven't seen him this high in the order for a while, but I think it's interesting because I think it's a good thing for the Oregon State offense in that you're able to put a Justin Boyd or a Garrett Forrester behind him. And so, you're going to see less teams pitching around him if you have those guys behind him. And, they're going to have to challenge him a bit. And then, of course, if he gets on base, a lot of RBI opportunities for those strong hitters behind him. So interesting to see where he ends up for the rest of the year. But I kind of like what he brings at the 2 spot.
Yeah, I mean, just get to have the availability of so many good hitters to be able to put him in the 2 hole is saying something, because I mean, yeah, he could be 2, 4 in that range, but I like where he is at 2, just like you said, because people aren't pitching around him.
Mm-hmm. He did get intentionally walked in the first game, and I want to say that was in the final inning where Greg Fuchs hit the walk off. I believe off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean, with a free base in the 9th inning, you're going to do that. But outside of that, no. I mean, teams have been forced to throw to him just because of the talent that's behind him. Outside of the top of the order, which we know is as dangerous as any in the country, I think we've seen a bit of a drop off, further down. That 7, 8, 9 range in the beginning of the year was about as hot as the guys atop it.
Yeah.
But now it's starting to fall off a bit. You're seeing guys more in the low 200s in the batting average, whereas when they were down in Surprise and came back for that series against Irvine, they were still in the 300s, which if you could get some 300 hitting out of your 7, 8, 9 guys, you're going to be in good shape. As long as they're able to bounce back and get into the mid 200s, I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue for this offense.
Yeah, no, that's like they were on a serious tear though down in Surprise.
100%. And so baseball will pick back up in 2 days on Friday against ASU for the second conference series of the year. It's the conference home opener. Oregon State will host ASU for 3 games, and I believe off the top of my head that the opener on Friday is a 7:00 first pitch, but I will need to double check that. I do know it's in the evening. Today was kind of odd, a noon pitch in the middle of the week. I wasn't expecting a huge turnout, to be honest. A noon first pitch on a Wednesday doesn't really seem conducive to a massive turnout. As good, if not better, than last night. So
really, okay, well, awesome.
A big shout out to Beaver Nation for filling Goss. Nice. I believe the announced attendance was right around 3,100 at noon on a Wednesday. So that was not too shabby.
Student attendance, okay?
Students showed out too, even with finals. Middle of the week, I saw all kinds of students. Outfield bleachers weren't necessarily full by any means, but the student section down the third base line there were quite a few people there. So shout out to the students too for showing out during finals week. As I said, they'll return to the Diamond at Goss on Friday as they host Arizona State. We want to promote a couple of things before we move on to the second half of the show. Angie, if you want to take people through what we've got going on at Beaver Blitz right now, what are some of the benefits of joining? Because the damn podcast is powered by beaverblitz.com on the 24/7 Sports Network.
It is. Oh my gosh, 24/7 Sports, Beaver Blitz. It is the place to go if you're a Beaver fan. The Lodge has been hopping lately. Lots of great discussions. Lots of questions being posed. We're talking a lot of JT Daniels. So a lot of things that maybe you're not hearing elsewhere, we're talking about in the Lodge. JP's weekly walk-off. You'll have Carter's amazing game coverage from baseball games. We have live threads and such from baseball. So, and then recruiting. So, after spring break, then we start up with spring football again as well. But recruiting and, gosh, Carter, we're around the corner from having official visits back on campus for football. So it's kind of never a dull moment at Beaver Blitz. And then you also, if you're under a promotional plan, which right now we are not running any big promotions, you are a member or you get free access to Paramount Plus. So I don't know about you, Carter. I totally use Paramount Plus streaming service. We watched Yellowstone on it. 1883 we're watching on it. So it's a great way to kind of catch up on some shows.
And no better time to take advantage of Paramount Plus than right now with March Madness starting tomorrow, Thursday morning on the West Coast, afternoon on the East Coast. You'll be able to watch games on Paramount Plus as all of the action unfolds at oh man, I don't even know how many sites they have this year. I got used to last year it all being in Indianapolis. I think like 8 sites on the first day, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk a little March Madness here as we wrap up the show in a few minutes, but definitely a great time to take advantage of that, of the Paramount Plus that is included with a full Beaver Blitz subscription. I'm also going to drop the link to our Beaver Blitz merch store in the YouTube chat. So if you're watching us live, go ahead and check that out. I'm decked out in my Beaver Blitz gear today. Angie mentioned she's got hers on the way shortly. And as I said, people are really loving what they've ordered. The quality is a lot better than I expected, to be honest, out of this random site that we were trusting with our brand.
Yeah.
Stuff is really top tier with.
And for the price, I mean, because I said this when we first launched, we're not making any money on this. This is all just we're doing it at a cost. So yeah, I'm not getting payment, not having another revenue stream selling merchandise. But we had so many people. It's been fun because we have a few of those limited edition drops that Carter designed, the 20th anniversary edition, and we've had people bring up some other ideas. And Carter, you probably don't even remember the original Beaver Blitz logo, but there was a mention of bringing back the Orange Man, which I don't know if I really want that on a shirt, but it might be kind of fun.
We might be able to make that happen. I think we'll have more limited edition drops in the future. My graphic design skills are fairly limited, but I can make some of that work. I mean, I got these 20th anniversary things.
I love them.
Up and rolling. So
I think we need some O-State ballas.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea. That's got to be in our next one.
Yeah.
Be sure to check out the Beaver Blitz merch store, beaverblitzmerch.myspreadshop.com. All right, let's get back into the sports here. I want to touch on a couple of Olympic sports real quick that are heading into the postseason. Gymnastics and wrestling. Wrestling sending multiple athletes to the NCAA tournament, and then gymnastics starting their postseason play here shortly. Angie, if you want to touch on any of this before we move on, just wanted to give a shout out to those sports.
Yeah, just give a shout out. I have watched some gymnastics this year when it's been on TV, and fun to watch. I'm not a huge gymnastics fan. Jade Carey is amazing. I mean, she's worth watching, the team, and they're fun to watch. Wrestling, good luck. I will be completely honest. I do not watch wrestling, but I'm always about the Go Beavs. So go Beavs.
I'm with you there. I will probably not be tuning in, as I'll be wrapped up in baseball and watching March Madness, but best of luck to the wrestlers and gymnastics athletes who will be participating in the postseason. I expect deep runs from individuals and honestly the entire Oregon State teams that are competing there as well. I think both of these programs are positioned really well, not only now, but for the future as well. I think these are two programs on the rise, and we've talked about it before, while football is king, it is still important to have a well-rounded athletic department, and Oregon State's right there with the best of them as far as the product that they're putting out there on the gymnastics mat, on the wrestling mat, and of course on the baseball diamond as well. So shout out to those two sports. And then another sport that's entering the postseason, and Oregon State will be participating in this one, is women's basketball. So the men's and women's NIT tournaments get underway this week. Men's tournament got underway yesterday on Tuesday. Oregon State women's team is hosting Long Beach State in the first round of the WNIT tomorrow, Thursday at 7 p.m. at Gill Coliseum. Angie, I don't know if you'll be tuning in. I might be wrapped up with a few other things. I for sure won't be in Corvallis to see it, which is unfortunate because I was hoping to potentially catch a little bit of that on top of the first day of the men's 64 team March Madness tournament. But I think I just kind of want to get your thoughts on how big this is for Oregon State to not only make a postseason tournament for what seems like the 10th, 15th, 20th consecutive year at this point, but to host in a tournament that really shouldn't be looked at as too far inferior from the big dance. I think the WNIT and the men's NIT, for that matter, just kind of go overlooked at times, and there are a lot of good teams participating there.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is I think it does get overlooked because people are thinking it's not the big dance, but there are some good teams that are playing in it. I think it could be kind of thought of as a letdown for the women's team just because they have had such success with the NC2As, with the actual tournament. But gosh, if this is considered a down year and they're hosting an NIT, I think that has to be considered, I guess, a great consolation prize. I mean, this is a team that has seen so much success, and you look at this more as kind of a rebuilding year for Scott Rueck and his squad. And I think there might have been some interesting takes with, Rueck seemed to take that transfer portal pretty heavy. He hit it pretty hard. And maybe that he got away from what his normal, bread and butter is of kind of building the team. So I'm anxious to see how he reacts now next year, if he goes more the prep route. He did have those shoes to fill, though, of the girls that transferred out. So it'll be an interesting run. But I think, it can't be looked at as anything down, because heck, there's some good teams playing in this WNIT.
Yeah, injuries and departures for various reasons did kind of, I think, limit the ceiling of this year's team, which, you look at the final record, they're just above 500. They missed the NCAA tournament. They're in the WNIT for the first time since 2012. And you say, it's a bit of a disappointing season, but I think just considering the circumstances, they dealt with a COVID pause in the middle of the year too. Really, really admirable of them to be able to finish strong, down the stretch and, get a win in the Pac12 tournament and ultimately, get to keep playing in the postseason. And I think, to your point, going the prep route, Oregon State's got one of the top recruiting classes coming in this offseason. Yeah. So they're going to be just fine. The talent's coming in, transfer portal taketh and giveth away, obviously. But the prep route is always going to be an option for a program of Oregon State stature under Scott Rueck.
Don't you think this makes the Rueck and the coaches and the rest of the players hungry for next year, though?
100%. Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely motivated to get back into the big dance. The WNIT is an unseeded 64-team bracket. Oregon State hosts Long Beach State at Gill Coliseum Thursday night at 7 p.m. On the men's side, Angie, obviously Oregon State is not going to be participating in March Madness this year. A 3-28 team. No chance there, as they, no chance of squeaking in as an at-large bid there.
Do you have your bracket done? I have not done my bracket yet. I need to do that, but I have.
So I was just going to ask you, do you have your bracket? I've got mine. I'm holding it up right here.
Okay.
As you can see, my national champion spot is still
empty. Gonzaga?
So
Gonzaga going?
I've got them in the Final Four. They're one of my Final Four picks. Want to save
I haven't even looked. I have not even looked at the brackets. I know who's in that Portland bracket. Yeah. You know what? I don't even care. I know that sounds horrible. It's horrible of me.
Take it back.
Okay, I take it back.
March Madness, and I mean the first 2 days in particular, that first round.
Yeah, it's fun. It
quite
is super
possibly
fun.
The best 2 days in all of sports.
Yeah, Masters. I'm going Masters on that one. But I back in the day before kids and everything, that it was like fun. Like I remember Barry Spiegelberg and I would head over to Jake's. We'd walk over to Jake's like right when it started. We'd watch a game or, like one game on TV and then back to the office. Or you'd watch it all evening and all weekend. I can't. I don't. Maybe it's because I've sat here with this stupid foot like laid up watching TV now for 6 weeks and I just want to go do something. But
I'm fully ready to sit in front of multiple screens.
Yes.
I will have like 3 TVs, a laptop.
You will.
This huge setup in the living room. Tomorrow, I will not be able to do that. I'll actually be in Portland doing some freelance work for our 24/7 Memphis site, Go Tigers 24/7. So I will be on site at Moda Center in Portland covering Memphis as long as they're there. So Thursday for sure, they open against Boise State. Okay. In an 8-9 matchup. The winner of that will take on Gonzaga on Saturday. And if Memphis is there, I will be on hand for that. So there is a potential I won't be in Corvallis for baseball the next couple of days. We'll see. But definitely wanted to get up to Portland and find a way to take in some March Madness in person, because after last year, man, I mean, I know Oregon State's not in it this year, but there's just something special about being there in person and taking in that atmosphere. So, and
it should be awesome this year too, because there's like no restrictions, masks, all of it. I mean, because in Indy there was some restrictions on how many people could go
Yeah,
in.
the capacity was still at 20%. Masks were required.
Yeah.
Now in Oregon, obviously the mask mandate is lifted, capacity requirement, back up to 100%. So the atmosphere should be top notch in Portland. I think a lot of these fan bases are going to travel well. Gonzaga, obviously, always travels well. They're a Pacific Northwest powerhouse. So I expect there to be a pretty strong contingent of Zags fans. UCLA, I believe, is also in Portland.
Yeah, they are.
They match up against Akron in the first round, and I think UCLA fans always travel well. So
what are your thoughts of the Pac-12 teams that are in? Do you think they make a run, or do you think this is another embarrassing year for Pac-12?
Tough question. So Arizona enters as the second overall seed. They're a 1 seed in the South region. I like their path to the Final Four. I really do. I think Villanova and Tennessee, both of those teams can challenge them in the Elite Eight. But if you look at my bracket right now, one of the very few games that I have left to pick is Arizona versus Tennessee. I think that is a toss-up.
Yeah.
Kirk Kriisa being out for Arizona is a bit of a wild card that I think a lot of people are glossing over. You don't just lose one of your best players and not suffer a little bit from that. So if he's able to go, I don't think he's going to be anywhere near 100%. And if he's not on the floor at all, obviously that's going to hurt. So Arizona obviously has the best chance to get in, but I also think UCLA has a pretty good path to get back to the Final Four as a 4 seed. So they are in the same half of the bracket as number 1 seed Baylor, who is underperforming a little bit recently. They're dealing with some injuries. I think is the most vulnerable 1 seed. And then at that point, I think too that East region has the potential for a ton of upsets. And I actually see UCLA getting to the Elite Eight in my bracket. So I think those 2 teams in particular are going to represent the Pac-12 well. I'm still a little torn on USC. I think they could be subject to a 10-7 upset in the first round. And then if they get through that, they're probably playing Auburn. Really tough matchup. So USC, I'm not so confident about, but the other 2, I'm pretty high on this year.
So Elite Eight, you have UCLA going Elite Eight and Arizona going Final Four?
Probably. I am really tempted to take
toss-up right now, right?
Yeah, I'm tempted to take Tennessee as a 3 seed. Yeah. We'll see. I don't know. What about you? What's kind of your read on these 3 Pac-12 teams? Are you disappointed there aren't more? And then also, if you had to pick a Final Four, who would you throw in there? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot because you don't have a bracket.
Yeah, I don't have my bracket set, but no, I mean, I've watched obviously a lot of Pac-12 basketball. I think Arizona, like you said, though, with some injuries going there. Baylor, I do too think is super susceptible. I think they had a really strong run early in the year, but I think they've kind of fallen off.
That's defending national champion.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think UCLA could make Final Four.
Yeah. But, I'm with you.
But
they have a favorable path for a 4 seed.
But you look at UCLA too. And my biggest thing with UCLA is, will they play like UCLA can, or will they not?
That's why I was so hesitant to even pick them to make it that far. I just think, we being Pac-12 basketball fans, we see a lot of Pac-12 games, and I think people look at UCLA's 25-7 record, Arizona's 31-3 record, and their standings in the national rankings, and say, hey, these are 2 really good teams. We watch a lot of their basketball, and we see them lose to the the Utahs and the Arizona States of the conference. And so I think I tend to be a little lower on the Pac-12 entering the tournament on an annual basis than some other, just because I think a lot of their success has to be taken with a grain of salt, considering how much this conference kind of eats itself up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's me. And we've seen UCLA play down to opponents from time to time. So no, it'll be fun.
They played down to Oregon State for a half too this year.
Exactly. Well, and USC, I mean, Oregon State took them into double overtime?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
scary stuff if you're picking those 2 teams, which makes me
I
little nervous about UCLA and the Elite Eight.
I don't think Oregon State is as bad as the 3-win record, but again, that's not acceptable. That is not acceptable, but I don't think they're quite that bad.
That's about all the Oregon State basketball talk I need
That's all we're talking about.
the foreseeable future.
Done.
I am so ready to put this season behind us. And what better way to do it than with an exciting 64 team field here that's going to unfold over the next couple of weeks. As I said, I'm going to be in Portland tomorrow and potentially for, the next few days covering Memphis for Go Tigers 24/7. So if you are like an incredibly loyal reader and would read anything that anyone affiliated with Beaver Blitz has to write, go check out our sister site at Go Tigers 24/7, because I'll be publishing some stuff there at least for the next day, if not a little bit longer.
Nice.
Outside
Keeping you
of that,
busy.
Angie,
And then next week it's spring break, but we will be back, right?
Yes. So next week will be our last pod for what, 2-3 weeks? 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
We're going to take a 2-week break because I will be overseas in Greece.
So not fair.
A little vacation. I think
I
will go on the record and I will toot my own horn and say that I have earned it. The last month has been an absolute grind covering 3 sports at the same time. So I am ready for a little bit of a break. That means no damn podcast for 2 weeks at the end of the month. But
and it
we
means
will be
you guys
back
have to
next
deal
week
with
on the 20th.
you have to deal with me and my practice reports. I know they're not Carter, but I will try my darndest to be as good as Carter.
Angie will be on hand at, I think, 3, maybe 4 practices. Saturdays are closed, so I'll only miss a couple, and then I'll be back for the full final week of camp, and then of course the spring game. So it'll be a short absence in terms of what I'm missing on the football field, but yeah, we will go 2 weeks without a damn podcast. But as I said, we will be back on the 23rd of March, next Wednesday, for our last podcast before that quick break. So
yay,
Angie, anything else you want to touch on? I think we've pretty much covered just
about
every sport we can.
I know. I think we're good. I think baseball's coming up, and fall camp or spring camp. Not fall camp, spring.
In that case, you can follow her on Twitter at Angie Machado1. You can follow me at Carter Bands. Be sure to stick with Beaver Blitz for all sorts of baseball coverage, football. You get the latest on JT Daniels. And then when the football team returns to the practice field, we will be there for that as well. So for Angie Machado, I'm Carter Baines. Thanks for joining us on the damn podcast, live or on your favorite podcast app. And tune in next week for another episode. We're done.